Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to picture, just for a second, a dark, empty void. Imagine a world where absolutely no living thing could create new life. Every single organism out there has a limited lifespan, right? So without the ability to recreate, eventually every plant, every animal, and every human would just vanish. There'd be no legacy, no future. But as we know, life is incredibly resilient.
Nature hasn't just left us out here to fade away into the dark. It has provided this brilliant, highly evolved biological mechanism to prevent mass extinction. It is literally the ultimate survival strategy for our planet. And we call that incredible mechanism reproduction. Basically, it's the biological process where living organisms produce new individuals that are similar to themselves. Whether we're talking about a tiny seed sprouting into a massive mango tree or a cat giving birth to a litter of kittens, reproduction is the engine of existence.
Now, this biological engine primarily branches into two distinct pathways. First, you have asexual reproduction. This requires just one parent and produces an exact identical clone. Then you have sexual reproduction, which requires two parents and mixes genetic data. And that mixing, that creates vital variations. Those tiny genetic differences are exactly what help a species adapt to changing, unpredictable environments.
Let's look at the asexual side first. Single-celled organisms like a microscopic amoeba or various bacteria rely on a process called mitosis. Imagine this single cell just stretching out and cleanly splitting right down the middle into two identical daughter cells. It's incredibly fast, and it allows these organisms to multiply exponentially in a very short amount of time.
And this spark of life takes on some really beautiful forms in simple creatures. Take the hydra, for example. It literally just pinches off a tiny bud from its side, which then grows into a totally new organism. Or think about fungi, releasing these glowing, lightweight spores into the air. They're designed to drift and start growing the exact second they land in a warm, moist place. Which, by the way, is exactly why your bread goes moldy if you leave it out on the counter.
So this brings us to a huge, foundational concept in biology. It was perfectly captured by the legendary scientist Louis Pasteur, who said, "New life always comes from pre-existing life." Pasteur's experiments actually proved that even invisible germs have to come from other germs, and that completely revolutionized our understanding of why medical instruments and our food absolutely must be kept meticulously clean.
Let's dig down into the rich earth for a second, because plants have this amazing asexual superpower called vegetative propagation. A potato tuber, or even just the edge of a leaf, can shoot out entirely new plantlets completely autonomously. No seeds required whatsoever. They literally just use stems, roots, or leaves to keep the whole life cycle going.
And humans? Well, we've brilliantly co-opted these natural cloning methods. Farmers use a technique called cutting to grow new plants from healthy stems. They use grafting to combine the best traits of two different plants, which is super common if you're growing roses. And then there's tissue culture. This is an absolute game changer that lets us grow entirely disease-free crops on a massive scale. Actually, fun fact, that's exactly how most commercial bananas are farmed today.
Now shifting gears to sexual reproduction in plants, a flower isn't just something pretty to look at. It is a highly evolved, precision-engineered reproductive organ. You've got the male part, the stamen, which produces the pollen, and right alongside it is the female part, the pistil, which is perfectly designed to catch that pollen and nurture the ovules hidden deep inside.
The journey of pollination is honestly incredible. Picture this. Pollen grains lift off the anther, travel through the air, and land perfectly on that sticky stigma. From there, a tiny pollen tube snakes its way all the way down into the dark ovary. The grand finale is a brilliant fusion with an ovule. That fertilized ovule then becomes a seed, and the ovary protecting it swells up to become the fruit that we eventually eat.
But making a seed is really only half the battle, right? The plant still has to send its children out into the world. Nature uses vectors like flowing water, passing animals, or just the wind. Think of a dandelion. Its seeds are fitted with these tiny hair-like parachutes designed to be carried miles away by the breeze, ready to start this majestic cycle all over again.
As we transition over to the animal kingdom, we start seeing two very distinct strategies. Fish and amphibians rely on external fertilization. They release massive clouds of eggs and sperm directly into the water, hoping they connect. It's totally a numbers game because the survival rate is pretty low out in the open. Reptiles, birds, and mammals, on the other hand, utilize internal fertilization.
The union happens inside a sleek, heavily protected internal environment, which drastically increases the offspring's chances of survival.
Which brings us to human reproduction. And it all revolves around one specific number, 46. Every normal human cell carries exactly 46 chromosomes. Think of them as our biological hard drives. But if a child received 46 chromosomes from their mother and 46 from their father, you'd end up with 92. The genetic system would literally crash.
So how does nature solve this math problem? With an elegant biological trick called meiosis. It slices the data exactly in half, creating special reproductive cells called gametes that contain only 23 chromosomes. 23 plus 23 gets us right back to that perfect 46. And because the data gets shuffled in the process, it creates the unique genetic variations that make you completely distinct from your parents and your siblings.
Let's contrast these specialized gametes for a second. The male gamete, the sperm, is microscopic, highly mobile with a tail, and produced by the millions. The female gamete, the egg, is completely different. It's relatively large, stationary, incredibly rare, usually only one is released per month, and it is absolutely packed with the initial nutrients required to kickstart a new life.
That monthly release brings us to our next key number, 28. Roughly every 28 days, a female's body releases an egg and thickens the lining of the uterus in preparation for a potential pregnancy. If fertilization doesn't occur, that thickened lining naturally sheds. This is a completely normal, healthy biological reset known as menstruation, and maintaining good hygiene during this time is an absolutely essential part of human health.
Now, if fertilization does happen, the genetic data combines and that determines the biological sex of the baby. The mother's egg always carries an X chromosome, but the father's sperm, it can carry either an X or a Y. If an X meets an X, it forms a biological girl. If a Y meets the X, it forms a biological boy. So the father's contribution ultimately makes the call, though it's worth noting that testing for a baby's sex before birth is strictly illegal in places like India to prevent gender-based discrimination.
When a single sperm penetrates the egg, we get that brilliant spark of fusion. This newly formed single cell is called a zygote. It travels down, attaches to the lining of the uterus, and kicks off an incredible 9-month gestation period. Safe inside that heavy internal protection, this single cell rapidly divides, differentiates, and builds complex organ systems until it is finally ready for birth.
But the continuity of life doesn't just stop at the delivery room. A newborn relies heavily on the mother's milk for vital nutrients and immunities, along with warmth and a strict schedule of vaccinations. And crucially, we have to talk about maternal health. The physical and mental well-being of the mother is paramount. Conditions like postpartum depression are incredibly common, and they are fully treatable. Seeking medical help is a brave, necessary step for the survival and growth of this new life.
Zooming out to the societal level, we have specialized heroes who safeguard this entire process. In India, for instance, ASHA workers, accredited social health activists, are the frontline defenders of life. They travel right through communities, guiding mothers on sanitation, tracking those vital vaccinations, and providing education on safe maternal care and family planning.
We also have incredible modern science on our side to help us make responsible choices. Contraceptives help prevent unwanted pregnancies and protect against infections. And on the flip side, science offers literal medical miracles like IVF or in vitro fertilization. This allows doctors to help a sperm and egg fuse outside the body to create an embryo, which is then carefully placed back into the uterus to grow.
And you know, protecting reproduction isn't just about human anatomy, it's about our entire ecosystem. Initiatives like the Seed Village program are designed to safeguard our agricultural biodiversity. By preserving indigenous local plant varieties, we ensure our crops can survive changing climates and diseases. It guarantees that we literally have enough food to survive the future. So as we pull back and look at the glowing, interconnected web of life in this explainer, from the microscopic division of a single-celled amoeba to the miracle of human birth to the vast agricultural fields that feed us, we are left with a pretty massive question. As we master the continuity of life in our labs and our fields, what new responsibilities do we hold? How will you help protect this fragile spark of continuity for the generations yet to come?